So what I'm going to do today is just go through a brief overview of the basic low volume products that are out there nowadays, and there are a lot more of them than there used to be a few years ago. And I'm going to talk about the basic products and some of the advantages that drip has over conventional irrigation systems. One of the things about drip irrigation that differentiates it from conventional irrigation systems are two main things. The primary one is the pressure that the system operates at. Drip systems utilize this kind of poly tubing here, which operates at around 20 to 30 psi. And a conventional sprinkler system that you're all probably more familiar with operates at probably 2 or maybe even 3 times that pressure, which is sometimes excessive. But a conventional sprinkler system operates usually around 60, 70 psi. And drip systems operate at much lower pressures. The other thing they do is they have much lower flow rates. They apply water much more slowly than a conventional sprinkler system, which applies water measured in GPM, or gallons per minute. A typical head, like some of these that Lawrence brought, have flow rates anywhere between 1 and sometimes up over 5 gallons per minute, which is quite a bit of water when you compare it to a drip system, which the flow rates are measured in gallons per hour. So you can see that it's quite a bit slower. And some of these emitters out here are half a gallon per hour is how much water they put out. So those are some of the key differences between a drip system and a sprinkler system. One of the nice things about drip, and by the way, I'm just going to speak about residential drip systems here that most people can do on their own or have done for relatively inexpensive amount of money. But it's a good system for people to put in themselves compared to a sprinkler system, because a sprinkler system, you have to bury the pipe in ditches and dig and use glue and hacksaws and all kinds of tools and special glues and stuff like that. Whereas a drip system like this I have here on the table, you can put this together without any glue, without any hacksaws, and really without any wrenches or anything at all. These are all just kind of hand screwed together. And so that lends itself well to the residential retail customer. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to go through some of the basic components of a drip system. And what I have here is an example of a drip system that's starting from a faucet, which most people have in their backyard, and can be relatively easy to do. You can also start a drip system from a valve, like we have back here, and connect it to an automated system. But I'm just going to kind of keep it simple, which is one of the things that I recommend everybody try to do when it comes to drip, because it's really easy to make it more complicated than it has to be. And if you keep it simple, you can end up with a very efficient system and a very reliable system that doesn't really waste any water. So I'm just going to go through these things starting at the point of connection and work down. The first thing I have right here is just a battery operated timer, which is just screws right onto the faucet, and it's a great way to automate your system and free you up to do other things like travel, and it also prevents you from turning on the system and then forgetting about it, which can sometimes waste a lot of water. There's all kinds of battery operated hose end timers available, and I'm not going to spend too much time on the timer right now, but just to let you know that it's a good option for automating a system, especially a drip system, by using a hose end timer. Now, the first big thing after the timer, and the order is important, by the way, of these components. This is what's called the head assembly, which is 3 or 4 main components that go at the beginning of the system. The first thing, really, after the timer or the faucet, if you don't want to have a timer, is a filter. And a filter is something that a sprinkler system usually doesn't have, because the orifices in the sprinkler heads are large enough so that if foreign matter or debris of some kind gets in there, it's just going to get flushed right on through the system. But with the drip system, the drippers, the emitters, and the micro sprayers and so forth have much smaller orifices. And so a filter is really an essential component of the system. It's something that you don't want to skip, because it's kind of like an insurance policy that'll prevent problems down the road. Following the filter, a preset pressure regulator that's not adjustable. It's preset at 25 psi, so that takes care of lowering the pressure on your system so that it gets down to the lower level that a drip system should be operating at. It just screws on to the outlet of the filter, and you always want to have it on the downstream side of the filter so that the filter protects it, and also so that the filter is under higher pressure. The next component after that is a swivel adapter, which allows you to connect the polyethylene tubing to the head assembly. By the way, all of these components here at the beginning have the same kind of threads that you have on a garden hose or a faucet. And this is one of the things that can cause some problems sometimes, because there's another type of thread called pipe threads, which are the same diameter, but they're much closer together. So people get mixed up on that sometimes, and they try to screw a female pipe thread onto a male hose thread, and although they look like they'll screw together, they'll leak. So it's important to go with all hose thread in a situation like this. After that, then we're going out to what we call the half-inch poly tubing, which is not really half-inch at all. There's no one standard size of poly tubing. There's actually more like 5. But in the retail market, there's 3 main sizes of so-called half-inch poly tubing. And they all utilize special fittings called compression fittings. And these are used without glue, and you just force the tubing into the compression fittings. So when you're dealing with poly tubing, it's really important to know the outside diameter, called the OD, of the tubing. So long as you get the right size fittings for the right size tubing, then you shouldn't have any problems with leaking or forcing it in. If there's one way to simplify a little bit about the hydraulics of it, I'd like to ask you to remember just 2 numbers when it comes to the tubing. The maximum flow rate is about 225 gallons per hour. That's a good number to remember, because you always want to stay below that when you're designing your system. That means you don't want to put more than 225 1-gallon per hour drippers on a single line of that half-inch tubing. The other number to remember is 400 feet, which is about the maximum run that you can use with half-inch tubing before you start seeing significant pressure loss, towards the end of the line. So long as you stay below 400 feet and 225 GPH, you really can't go wrong. Always put the drippers, which are these little button-shaped things that you see on that tubing, directly into the side of the half-inch poly tubing wherever you can. And you can snake this tubing around. It's quite flexible. We have T's and elbows for it too if you need to branch off and get to other areas. But what you don't want to end up with is a whole backyard full of spaghetti tubing, which is the micro tubing that I have right there. It can just make maintenance a real chore and cause aesthetic problems as well. The 1/4-inch tubing, really, you don't want to use that as your main distribution line. It's just a way to extend a dripper away from the main tubing wherever you have to. It's also used quite a bit when you want to go over to a container and irrigate some plants that are in containers or what have you. Or if you have a foundation shrub here and there, and you want to extend a dripper over to it, then that's a good place to use it. Its maximum flow rate is about 30 gallons per hour, and you don't really want to run that more than about 30 feet. And like I said, use that sparingly. The 1/2-inch tubing uses these compression fittings. The 1/4-inch tubing does not. The 1/4-inch tubing uses these things called 1/4-inch barbed fittings, which are pretty generic throughout the industry and throughout different manufacturers. You don't really have to worry about different sizes of 1/4-inch barbed fittings. I'm going to talk a little bit about drippers now, because drippers or emitters are kind of the heart of the system. That's the device that regulates the water. The way you install them into the 1/2-inch tubing, you just take a little tool there called the hand punch. Just punch a hole and then force the barb side of the dripper into the hole. Now there's all different kinds of drip emitters. There's ones with 1/2 gallon per hour flow, 1 gallon per hour flow, 2, 4 gallon adjustables. I always tell people to select the dripper based upon the soil type in their yard, and to just stick with that dripper throughout the system. If you have heavy clay soils, like are pretty common around here, you don't want to go with a high flow dripper like a 4 gallon per hour dripper. You want to stick with either a 1/2 or a 1 gallon per hour dripper, because the soil just cannot absorb the water that fast, and you don't want it to run off. And even with a 4 gallon per hour dripper, if you put it on compacted clay soil, you will see that after a while it'll start running off as well. So on lighter, loamier soils, you want to use a higher flow dripper like a 2 or a 4, and put them a little bit closer together. With heavier clay soils, you want to use a lower flow dripper and space them farther apart. There's other kinds of drippers I have here. We have flag drippers, which are one of the few drippers that you can actually take apart, and those are a very good dripper for people who have using reclaimed water, or let's say gray water or recycled water, or really hard water where you got buildup. Because with the flag dripper, you can remove the stem from the body and clean it out and put it back together again. But with a button dripper or a PC dripper, you can't do that, and there's really no way to clean them out if they're clogged. Like you can try a few things, but most of the time it's better just to replace it. These things are not really expensive, and sometimes it's better just to replace them if they clog up. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit real quick about micro sprayers and sprinklers, and this is a whole line of products. I only brought a few of them here. That they come on a stake, and they put out water in gallons per hour. It's a little bit higher, like 14 to 20 gallons per hour. They cover a bigger area, but they're really useful for small planters, small flower beds, little slopes where you got ground cover, any place where you got a lot of little plants close together. And also a lot of plants like to be cooled off and like little overhead water on them. that's a very good choice to use in those situations. People ask me all the time, well, can I put micro sprinklers and drippers on the same system? And the answer is yes, you can, because they're covering a bigger area. They are well in balance with the drip system if it's designed properly and everything's laid out right. So the other thing about micro sprinklers, we have these things called micro sprayers, which are really nice for plants that are in containers. One of the things about putting drippers in potting soil is the water tends to go straight down after a while and just kind of boring a hole right through the really light potting soil. So we have little misting heads that work really nice for containers to keep the water from going right out and through. It spreads the water out over the soil surface, and the plants do very well with those. The other product category I want to talk a little bit about right now is dripper line, which connects to the half-inch poly tubing with a quarter-inch barb, or it's available in half-inch tubing too. And what it is you've probably all heard of soaker tubing. Well, soaker tubing's come a long way over the last 5 or 10 years, especially the last few years. That product there is quarter-inch dripper line with an emitter that puts out a little under a gallon per hour every 12 inches. And it's an excellent product for any area where you want to saturate the entire soil surface underneath that tubing. For example, places where you got ground cover or even vegetable gardens, it works very well for that type of situation. The emitters are self-flushing and self-cleaning, and you just can connect it back to itself or close it off with a plug, whatever's easier. The other product category I want to mention a little bit is retrofit products. And these are products that are specifically designed to convert over a conventional sprinkler system to a low volume irrigation. And on the end there is a product called a 12 outlet drip head, which you can just screw onto the top of your existing sprinkler riser and run the quarter-inch tubing out of that over to the plants. We got a lot of products that are designed to convert over existing systems because, you know, a lot of people are converting over and switching a sprinkler system over to drip. Retrofit products. They come in really handy for conversions because you know, why put in a whole new drip system when you got the backbone of a sprinkler system right there? And most of them have pressure compensating emitters or pressure regulators built into the head itself, so that you don't need to add any special regulator or anything to the system. That one right there has a filter and pressure compensating emitters already built into the head, and it's a very nice product for conversions. Let me just say thank you to Linda and the committee for inviting me here. It's great to be in Del Mar, and thanks you for attending.